Guys, we're live. Boxing Gossip Podcast number 10. Joined tonight by Paul and by Tom, who are on with me. Hopeful Jet will be able to join. Sorry, let me just put that on mute. So we've got Tom and Paul on the line. Hopefully Jet will be able to join this evening. If not, the three of us will just crack on. Slightly quieter week in the world of boxing this week. Probably not the sort of huge topics that have emerged from nowhere that there's been in the previous couple of weeks or so. But still, more than enough to get some discussion flowing and various topics. And to start off, I had a topic that was sent in by Rick. So shout out to Rick, who wanted us to talk about the pay-per-view model. And with all the fights we've been seeing recently, Joshua Brazil, talk of Eubank Golovkin, the talk of Vargas Brooks, he wanted to get our opinions on when a fight should be pay-per-view, when we should sort of agree to part with our money for a bill of that nature, and when we should not, and put up a stand if you like. So but perhaps an interesting one, especially given some of the fights on the horizon at the minute. Tom, the pay-per-view model, is that something you've got a strong opinion on either way, mate? You're on mute, mate.
That's right, I am. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So the pay-per-view thing is quite strange. Like, I never had a Sky subscription when I was growing up, so I never had to pay pay-per-view. And usually when I went to see my boxing like that, I saw it in a pub. So I've never really paid pay-per-view. I don't think I've ever, maybe once in my life, bought a pay-per-view. So I'm not a great. I don't know the real history of it so much, but it seems to me like what's strange for boxing is that nearly every other sport is for free. And why is it that we pay for boxing, we don't pay for other sports? Like, usually, say if you're, say, for Sky, they pay money for certain sports to fill their broadcasting and get advertising. But with boxing, they seem to be able to treat it like an expense. So, like golf on Sky, who ever pays for golf? Nobody ever pays for golf. Football, nobody pays for football. Like, the idea should be, when you're paying money to something like Sky, would be that your subscription, the money you're paying, you don't have to pay twice. So it's kind of like double taxation to me. I think it's a bit crap. Like, so then let's say, like, back in the day, people used to have to pay, I think it first started with the Ali fights back in the 70s, when they would go to closed circuit television. So if you wanted to see Ali fight Foreman or Frazier, you'd go to your local cinema and they'd have a feed of it, and people would pay a few dollars to go in. I'd say that would have been a great atmosphere. My God, that would have been pure mayhem. Imagine like 500-600 people boozed up going to watch the boxing. That would have been kind of crazy. But like, so it came from those big fights. But when we look to see what actually we're paying for in England at the moment on Sky, I think the level of them are extremely poor. Like, can you imagine trying to compare something like, name a bad one, Joshua Brazil, right, or Joshua Martin against the Rumble in the Jungle? Like, you got to be shitting me, like, it's just chalk and cheese. So the way that it's devolved now in the English market, I think, is kind of, it's hard to say to I don't know. It's one thing to pay money to go see Ali fight the Trilla in Manila, or to see Hagler fight Hearns, because back in those days when it was pay-per-view, the guys who were fighting would put a war on because they were getting paid amazing money. Well, now, like, guys play pay-per-view and all they care about is, they don't care about the fan a lot of the time, they care about winning. But say, like, the level of things we're paying for is very poor. But like, what's weird about it is that they follow the same model in all these countries. Like, you go to Denmark, have you seen some of the fights they pay-per-view in Denmark or Sweden for rubbish? Like, what do you call your man that is, what do you call the big guy, Hellenius?
Oh, Hellenius, yeah.
Paying for Hellenius fighting a bum, paying like €60.
It's the same in New Zealand with Joseph Parker.
Parker, or in Australia as well, to watch, like, you know, one of the crap Australian fighters fighting.
Yeah.
So it's like, so for some reason, like, the sports networks, they see they can charge for a thing, so they do. So, but like, even if you're going to pay, like, it's one thing paying for a bloody, you know, let's say, I don't even remember it. I don't even know. It was Calzaghe versus Hopkins pay-per-view. Like, it's one thing paying for, like, two pound-for-pound guys going at it. But Joshua versus Brazil, like, and the undercards are pretty poor. Like,
Mate, to be fair though, Tom, Anthony Ogogo was on the card, to be fair.
That is true. And he has, like, people give out about his footwork, but you watch his foxtrot in Celebrity Come Dancing and tell me that he doesn't have good footwork. So it's kind of
pay-per-view.
Yeah, tell me that's on pay-per-view. So it's like, you know, the only good pay-per-view that I remember in the last few years in England was the Joshua Whyte one, that was only a British title fight and should never have been pay-per-view. And the only reason why it was pay-per-view, the only reason why it was a good card was because there was upsets on the undercard. That they weren't all just 3 hours of watching very unequal matchups. It's one thing I gotta say, like, Frank Warren's cards tend to be maybe not so good, as in they don't have as many good fighters on, but the cards seem to be more equal. There seems to be more chance of an upset or a fight breaking out. But when you have, like, the big names all fighting filler, which is generally the case, I prefer to watch British level title fights, you know, your English level title fights on an undercard than to watch a name fighting a nobody.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I understand that, mate. There's some very fair points in there. Paul, what about yourself, mate? Are you someone who's been buying the pay-per-views recently?
No, do you know what? I could pretty much all of what Tom just said could have quite easily come out of my mouth. I never ever pay for a pay-per-view. I'm pretty sure I've never bought a pay-per-view ever. I pretty much stream everything, but I mean, to be fair, I was in the armed forces for 13 years, so there weren't, you know, there's been a big chunk of my life where the option weren't there to do that. But I mean, for me, it's like what I think it should be a top fight that should be pay-per-view. I agree with Tom as well. I don't like why boxing? Why, like, you don't get pay-per-view in any other sport, and they seem to be able to, you know, make it work financially. Obviously, they must do. I mean, I don't know whether it's the fact that boxing is slightly less popular than other sports. I think
it's just because they can get away with it historically.
Well, I'm wondering whether it's that. I mean, like, you know, it seems to be how it seems to be at the minute is what decides whether a fight is going to be pay-per-view or not isn't the quality of the fight, and it isn't the quality of both of the boxers individually, but it's more about their popularity and whether they whether the promoters think people will pay for it. Because we've had this at the minute, I mean, with Brook Vargas, like, you know, Vargas wants so much money to come, and then Brook's like, well, if he's getting paid that much, I want to get paid that much, and then Hearn's like, well, I've got to put it on pay-per-view in order to pay him this money. But then again, is Brook Vargas pay-per-view?
Brook Vargas is not a pay-per-view fight, and the other thing,
not?
The other thing is, like,
it will be pay-per-view. Yeah, it definitely will be.
I thought it would be.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
But it's not good enough. Like,
oh no.
It's a top 5 guy fighting a top 15 guy. That's the fight in welterweight.
The thing is, the fight isn't bad. Kell Brook's a really good fighter, and Vargas has got. He's got something about him. He's also caused a couple of upsets and whatnot, but they're not known. I don't think that's going to do very well.
No, I think that will absolutely bomb because Kell Brook is just he's just not a personality. He doesn't have the fan base. And the Vargas fight, whilst it's people like ourselves know who Vargas is, he's not someone who is overly marketable himself. He's not someone who's really crossed over to the
No.
market. I mean, do you know what? I'll play devil's advocate with you both here, and I agree with a lot of the sentiments that you've said actually, but there's a few things that I pick up on, and I guess one of them is that essentially in any business, supply and demand is a key thing, and the problem is that the demand for these pay-per-views does seem to be there. I mean, the rumours are, and this isn't confirmed, so feel free not to believe this, but the rumours are that Brazil versus Anthony Joshua did well in excess of 400,000 pay-per-view buys. So that's a clear indication that there is enough market there to justify doing these pay-per-views. And I guess from a pure business perspective, you can say, how can you avoid doing the pay-per-views if there's that much money out there? I guess the second thing to add to that is if you look at the US model, they've had massive investment from Al Heyman into the PBC side of things, which has allowed them to do things on more free-to-air TV. But what that means is realistically, if you're an Anthony Joshua, if you're a Chris Eubank Jr., if you want to earn the money, the seven-figure paydays for these fights, I do think you've either got to go to America or fight on pay-per-view. I don't see how a fight like Joshua Martin could have actually happened without the pay-per-view market. And I don't want to be overly buying into Eddie Hearn's hype, but I do think there's some truth in what he's saying in that the demand is clearly there, and fights like that probably wouldn't get made without the model. The guys like Joshua would have to go over to the States. So what are your guys' thoughts on those points?
Yeah, well, the thing is as well, I suppose boxing is different from a lot of other sports in other ways as well, isn't it? I mean, the sort of like if you look at football, for example, huge stadiums, so much more revenue from ticket sales and stuff, much more revenue from sort of like high-end sponsors and stuff like that, and sort of like a fight like, I don't know, say we were to get Fury versus AJ later in the year or beginning of next year or whatever. That's a one-off, isn't it? Football's on every week, and I guess there are some differences, and I guess you can kind of understand it from certain sort of angles. If you look at it from the right sort of angle, you can kind of understand it. It is a bit different. It is a bit unique.
But the thing I'd say is that most sports, most television, when they're putting it on, it's a cost to them. When they're putting on football, it's a cost to them. It costs them money to put on football, and they make it on their subscription. That's it, and they're advertising. And boxing, I think it's got a historical thing for it. It's like all the sports. Look at all the sports that are on Sky. All of them cost them money to put them on. Every single one of them. But they see boxing as a way to make money because historically they can get away with it. Like, imagine, we're talking about whether there's a market there. Can you imagine if they put the Champions League final or the World Cup final on pay-per-view? Like, there'd be a market for that.
Yeah, but I guess the key difference is that the vast majority of people who buy the Sky packages are buying it for the football, whereas I think there's very few people who will go out and only buy Sky for the boxing, I guess.
I mean, you can see it from both
here,
sides, can't you? I can see what Tom's saying as well, though, Irish Tom, because like actually thinking about it, like years ago, remember like Eubank Ben, they were huge fights. They were on ITV.
They were on ITV, and they got paid very good money for it at the time. Those boys they were paid like hundreds of thousands of pounds, £500,000 back in the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of money. Just as much money as some of these guys are getting now. So boxing was way more popular then than it is now. Like you gotta, like you look at how many people would know the boxers walking down the street. Boxers say like Lloyd Honeyghan, right? Lloyd Honeyghan was a very famous man in the 1980s. he's probably the equivalent now of somebody kind of like Anthony Crolla. You know, the normal person on the street wouldn't know who they were.
Yeah.
You know, so like the reason why as well it's more niche now is because they actually went to the pay-per-view model. But the other thing is as well is that Tom, how many subscribers does Box Nation have?
Do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. If
But
anyone in the chat knows, please write it down.
I think it's a couple of 100,000.
Right.
Anyway, I think I remember in my head I have a number like 200,000 or 300,000. Don't know if that's right or not. But like, how many subscribers do Sky have? They probably have, 15 million, I think, or 10 million subscribers. So like, there's going to be, Stelios says 500,000 a month. Yeah, so it's like, if you've got to assume probably if there's that much Box Nation, there's going to be that many on Sky as well that want it for the boxing. I know my uncle gets it for the boxing. So so you could imagine that if there's 500,000 or something of the Sky subscription, that's how much do you pay every week or every month on Sky? Is it 50 quid a month?
Yeah, 50 quid. Yeah.
50 quid. So that's 500,000. So it's it's £600 a month. So say £500 a month, and you got how many? Say you got 500,000 subscribers for that. That's a lot of pounds. It's 250 million pounds they should be pumping into boxing. They're kind of numbers that you think that they should be making a hefty profit on. If they pump 200,000 of that, 200 million of that 250 million back in, we'd be getting all this shit for free.
Yeah, I'm not do you know what? I don't see it that way personally. Because if you think, I don't know how much Box Nation is a month. I think Box Nation's a tenner a month.
12, yeah, 10 or 12
or something like that. So, Jet, how you doing?
Hi guys, sorry about the wait. My bad.
No worries at all. I'll bring you in just a second, mate. But yeah, I guess with Box Nation, you're looking at £10 or £12 a month. Whereas with Sky, I think the Sky customer is a lot more broad in terms of their sporting interests, and which is obvious, I guess. But also,
I don't think so.
Do you know?
I don't think it's broad. I think there's people who probably get it for the football. I think there's people who probably get it for the rugby, and there's people who probably get it for the darts, and people who probably get it for the boxing.
There's a lot who get it for the Formula 1 as well.
It's on Formula 1 now, is it?
Oh, have they changed it? Maybe I've got that wrong.
Formula 1 apart from one or two Grand Prix that are on BBC. I think they're on BBC as well, but it's like a dual cast, I think.
Absolutely. Jet, what we've been talking about for the first 20 minutes or so is pay-per-view. When is a fight a pay-per-view? When isn't a fight a pay-per-view? Basically, just to give you a brief update, sort of Tom and Paul both started with the viewpoint that the quality of the fights should be covered by our Sky subscriptions. The likes of Brook, Vargas, the likes of Joshua Brazil, and I do agree with them to an extent. I'm kind of playing a bit of devil's advocate by saying, firstly, the demand is there. These pay-per-views are selling big numbers, so from a business perspective, they've got to be done. And secondly, the way the UK market works at present, if pay-per-view didn't exist, I think a lot of these fighters would be going over to America. So I'm kind of playing a bit of devil's advocate. Where do you sort of sit on the debate?
It's a very interesting debate. I mean, I've heard a lot about it in the coming weeks, especially with Brook Vargas being potentially pay-per-view. But the problem is there isn't really a demand for that sort of fight. Whereas Golovkin Eubank is a potential pay-per-view, as we've discussed in weeks previous. But as I said, it's very hard to describe what pay-per-view means to certain people and what aspect they consider it. I understand Tom and Paul's I understand what they say. I certainly think it should be covered by our normal Sky subscription because the current market is very, very expensive just for Sky. Just to buy a Sky package with Sky is probably about 50, 60 quid, I'd say, in terms of you buying that, and then you get the basic channels as well. I think something like that, probably around 40, 50, and then if you get any add-ons, you get about 10, 20 quid. So it is relatively expensive as it is. I mean, Box Nation as well. If you're paying for all of that and you're a massive boxing fan like ourselves, you're paying, close to 60 quid, and you don't want to pay another 20 up to £20 for a pay-per-view such as Joshua Brazil. It's not really, it doesn't really warrant it for me. For me, it just depends on the fights. If there's public demand for the fights, then you know, by all means, it has to. I think they kind of understand that it has to be pay-per-view. Some fans will accept it, most of the fans won't. But I think there's always going to be positive and negatives to pay-per-view, and it's going to be very, very hard to you know, always justify or always discredit it. So my view on it is, you know, not favourable, but not necessarily totally against it either. So I'm kind of in the middle of it. I understand why it happens, but on the other hand, there should be enough money with the big promoters such as Matchroom. They recorded, I think, a 5-point-something million pound profit for the last calendar year or something like that, or the last financial year, sorry. So, I mean, it was just, it depends. It depends on the fights, I think, well and truly.
Yeah, and I still do maintain, you know, like that the likes of that Martin fight couldn't have happened without the model. And you do wonder if that pay-per-view model didn't exist, would a guy like Anthony Joshua have signed with Al Heyman by this point? And I think that's a definite possibility.
Well, look, if you're telling me that if we got rid of pay-per-view, we wouldn't have the Joshua Martin fight, I think we should all applaud that.
Yeah, that is a good point, I guess.
Yeah, and the other thing is if Anthony Joshua went over to America and fought in America, we get more good fights. Because the big fights tend to happen in America if it's not Floyd Mayweather being a complete ducker. Like, the big fights will happen because there's big money over there and it's more likely to happen. It's only pure fluke that England has got some good heavyweights at the moment. But if it was any other era, it would, you know, it would be, if he stayed in England. Look, if we want to know what's going to happen with Joshua, I think it's like, just look at how they did with Chris Eubank Sr. Chris Eubank Sr. fought bin men for his entire career. And I think we're going to see that with there's a good chance we'll see it with Joshua because, well, for a while anyway. And they're going to make every single one of them pay-per-view. And we may say the fight mightn't happen, this, that, or the other. The very thing that took away boxing used to be the #1 sport in a lot of countries. The thing that brought it away from that is that all these fights went to subscription services. And now nobody knows about boxing unless you're a hardcore. Or if you just happen to have Sky and you see an odd fight here or there. The very thing that's killing boxing. Can you imagine having AJ fighting Dillian Whyte in a British title fight on ITV with 20 million people looking at it? Because that's what used to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's definitely not as. I mean, you can really notice how it's come down in popularity, boxing. I mean, when Tyson Fury won the title, I was like, obviously buzzing, and I can remember sort of saying, God, you see the Fury fight, see the Fury Vlad fight, to a lot of people, and I got so many blank stares, like, what? Oh, did he? Like, people, a lot of people, and people I would have expected to be, you know, a bit like more into boxing, like, people just ain't. They're not, you know.
Do you know what? The only thing I'll say, again, I don't want to. I'm probably coming across here like a complete Eddie Hearn nut hugger, but part of the reason I'm doing it is because you know, it's always good to play a bit of a devil's advocate and, you know, have a bit more of a back and forth on it. Yeah, exactly. But one thing Eddie Hearn did say is that the success of this pay-per-view model has allowed Sky to increase its budget for the normal shows. Now, I know people will say this quality of shows should be on anyway, but since he made that announcement, we've had Anthony Crolla versus Linares, which I understand is going to be a Saturday night show, not associated with pay-per-view. And also, and I know I might get some stick for saying this, that Leeds card is actually not a bad card. You've got Warrington Highland, you've got Coyle Nurse, which I think is a good fight, and you've also got, like, I know he's probably not going to be in a competitive fight, but you've got Dillian Whyte on the undercard, who's a I guess you could say is a big name, a big sort of guy making an appearance. So I'm
Tom,
yeah,
Tom. So like has Crawler ever been a pay-per-view fighter?
no,
So he's still not pay-per-view. Has your man ever been Warrington been a pay-per-view fighter?
no.
No. So they're just the same. So there's been no difference. He's just giving it a spin. Look,
Could he have bought in Linares, though, a year ago on a Saturday night show? I don't know, mate. If you think about Linares previously, it was on a pay-per-view, wasn't it?
I think the next few years will tell us a little bit more about whether the pay-per-view model has enriched our lives as boxing fans, if you like. You know, if we start getting these fights that are being spoken of, you know, like Triple G, Eubank Jr, which I know we're going to come on to and stuff like that, and we start getting, you know, being able to pull a lot of the big names over, then I guess it's worth it then, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath. Look, Froch got Froch and your man over. That wasn't pay-per-view. Froch got Butte over and paid him a fortune, and that wasn't pay-per-view.
That's a good
And the
point.
undercard was awful. We have to remember that. So
When was the last time we had a good undercard? These ideas that we get good undercards.
for
We
me,
had
my
one
favorite
good
undercard.
undercard last year, I think.
My favorite undercard was probably the May 30th one when Linares came over. So Linares, Mitchell, Selby, Gradovic, Andy Joshua was actually on the undercard against Kevin Johnson, if I'm correct. There was another fight as well.
He was headlining, I think, with Johnson, wasn't he?
No. It may have been against someone else then, but he was on the undercard. I remember he was on the undercard, and Brook Gavin was the headline, unfortunately. But yeah, that was my favorite part. That was pretty.
But that's not even but that's not even like, you know, that's probably a fairly reasonable card. But you know, none of those fights are going to make you get up in the morning and want to pay money for pay-per-view, if you ask me.
No, I mean the thing is, there's
not one standout fight.
It's easy to see both sides, isn't it? I mean, like, the depressing part of it is now, and like, okay, Tom says Joshua Brazil did 400,000 buys. Yeah, if that's true, and regardless of whether it's true or not, the chances are Joshua is never going to be on another show that's not pay-per-view. You know,
correct. Yeah, only unless he takes a big loss. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he keeps winning,
soon to the TV channel.
Sorry, Tom.
Sorry, I said coming soon to a TV channel near you.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is we could have Joshua against a succession of binmen, and all of them be pay-per-view. It doesn't really bother me because I won't pay for them either way. But it's a bit of a depressing sort of like.
It's a cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's consistent. Shove him down our throats. Pay-per-view. It's just.
And it limits the fans. It makes boxing a small. Like, that's one of the worst things. It keeps boxing small.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't branch out or anything like that. That's the worst thing. I mean, Box Talk tweeted out about MMA, and this was before the John Jones drug test violation came into play. So I think he tweeted it yesterday or today, early morning today, and they said UFC have all their big stars on one card, UFC 200, and you know, returning Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt, which is now the main event, and then UFC 202, Conor McGregor versus Bing. There's a lot of big names on one card, whereas you know the cards that we get in boxing, and we're all like strong boxing fans on this podcast as well. We're only getting, you know, a complete minority from what the UFC do, and you know, boxing really needs to take a leaf out of it. It's really, you know, if the pay-per-view model works, but it does, you know, suffocate the sport in some way, shape, or form as well.
One thing I'd say though there is that the UFC paid their fighters shite. They paid them, you know.
Here we're not talking about money, Tom. As in, we're just talking about branching out.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying, like that is at least, you know, they do pay their fighters very little. You know, I think they only paid them in food a lot of the times.
But the good thing about UFC as well, also, just briefly touching on it as well, since we're discussing, is that at least the number 1 and number 2 fight, or the 1 and number 3 fight, you know, in boxing you just have like loads of guys. You pick your route, and you pick your, Canelo versus Liam Smith. He's handpicking and cherry picking Liam Smith for an easy win. And I heard rumours on Twitter that Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders is in the play for November, December time, which is even more embarrassing for Canelo.
I mean, there's more restrictions, and it's a little bit easier for the UFC to do it, since it's really like one guy is kind of like running the whole show, whereas in boxing, you've got the different governing bodies, and then you've got...
Corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of shit. But, I mean, the thing is, and I think Tom touched on this earlier, I mean, it's a business, and at the end of the day, we can discuss it till we're blue in the face, but the fact is, the pay-per-view model is clearly working. It's clearly making money. It's clearly enabling,
That shouldn't normally happen on normal subscriptions, guys.
So it's not going to stop. Does anybody see anything changing with regards to this?
The only thing I can see, and I think pay-per-view at the minute is so dependent on Anthony Joshua, because I expect the Kell Brook pay-per-view to flop terribly. Chris Eubank, if he does fight Golovkin, which we'll come on to a minute, that will be a massive success, but that's the end of Eubank's deal with Sky, and who knows where he'll go next. What I'm getting at here is, if Anthony Joshua happened to take one on the chin, go down on his arse, that could actually change the pay-per-view model foreseeably, I think. He is pay-per-view at the minute, isn't he?
I was going to say, what happens if he doesn't take one on the chin, doesn't get sparked out, but he gets totally embarrassed by someone like Tyson Fury? Just playing devil's advocate.
I think that's worse.
Yeah, I think that's worse as well. A 12-round schooling, Irish Tom, I totally agree, mate.
Because Lennox Lewis got chinned a couple of times, and it didn't affect him. He came back and he fought back. But if somebody gets schooled, George Foreman never came back from what Ali did to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, anyone can take one and get dropped. Anybody, especially at heavyweight.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason I'm more thinking about him getting sparked out is because the level of opposition he's facing, they're not going to be able to undress him. I don't think that Tyson Fury fight or a David Haye fight is even going to happen in a year's time. I think that's 5 or 6 fights away, if I'm honest. And the level of guys he's in with, they've got puncher's chances, haven't they?
I can see the Stiverne fight happening, and I'd like to see that.
They've been discussing it. I saw it on Sky Sports Boxing yesterday, I think it was. They've been discussing it, saying Barry Hearn said he wants Stiverne next. He reckons they can get a sneaky voluntary in before Joseph Parker mandatory. So
let's move over to that one, actually, because that was one of the topics on the list, and I think, seeing as we're discussing pay-per-view, it actually ties in quite nicely. And then after we've discussed that, we can go back into the Eubank and Kell Brooks thing. But if you look at Stiverne, that is a fight that I really like for Joshua. Super durable, bit of skill, bit of power, semi-experienced, fought at a slightly higher level, been in with Wilder. I actually think that's a better fight. And the news, as Jet correctly says, is that the Parker fight may be delayed now till January. So there is a chance they could get a voluntary in November time, something like that. And for me, there's no better opponent at this stage for Joshua than Bermane Stiverne. So what's everyone's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a great fight. I think it'd tell us that. It'd definitely tell us a whole lot more than we know at this point about Joshua. I mean, if he were to knock him out, it'd be pretty impressive. But I mean, I think, like you say, Tom, he's very, very durable. He can really take a shot. He took a few in the Wilder fight, and Wilder couldn't get him out of there. And as we all know, Wilder, while other parts of his game leave a hell of a lot to be desired, he has got that equaliser, I think it. I think I agree with you, Tom. I don't think there's a better fight out there for AJ right now.
Yeah, and I mean, just to clarify that, and I know you're on the same page here as well. I mean, clearly there's better fights, as in, like I'd rather see the Tyson Fury fight, but I mean,
Oh yeah,
being realistic, and the stage he's at in his career, I don't think there's a better fight out there for him. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's kind of what I meant too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
of
on,
course.
Tom.
It's probably a good fight for his development. That's one I would say. But I don't know if it's going to be a good fight, and I don't even know. I suspect. Did he have one return match against Rossi since he lost against Wilder?
Yeah,
and he looked crap.
Yeah.
And he looked really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's. I think he's probably shocked because he took a beating in that fight against Wilder. He took a terrible beating, and and he's quite old.
He is.
Now,
I think he's 37 actually. Let me I'll look that up. Yeah.
He fought. If he fights this year, it'll be 2 fights in 2 years, and apparently he's blown up in weight a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't expect that to be a good fight at all. I think that if Stiverne was really on his game, I think he could pose difficulties for Joshua because he has power and he's got good counter-punching ability, and Joshua backs him to the rope. He could really tag him. But if he's not what he was, it's probably a bad fight. I'd like to know anybody know what the average age now is of Joshua opponents? Is it under 35 at the moment?
That's a good question. There's been to be fair, Dillian Whyte, Charles Martin, they're both younger, aren't they? Brazil was younger.
Yeah.
Brazil was younger than Joshua.
No, but I mean, he's a younger guy, isn't he? I think he's
30?
20s, I think. Oh, 30s, yeah.
Was he? I'm just saying that they're matching him.
He was younger than that.
No, I don't think he was in the. He didn't start boxing until he was 23 or 4 or something.
Oh yeah, he's 30 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think it depends on what Stiverne you're getting, but I think it's looking at it as if I was Joshua, I think it's a good fight because it's a development fight. But as a fan, you just want to see him in the tear-ups with the good guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jet, you got any thoughts on Stiverne, mate?
I'm probably opposite to everyone. I think, as I said, it's good for his development, but to be fair, I'll probably pretty much go with Irish Tom. It's not a fight that I'd probably be interested in seeing because I'd expect AJ to probably win, by KO. I think the beating that he got by Wilder was so bad that he looked poor against Rossi as well. I can't see him posing any legitimate threat to AJ in terms of skill wise or anything. He has a puncher's chance, but that's it. And even in the Areola fights, I think if he's there to be hit, he's there to be hit clean. So for me, I'm not really interested in that fight. But it's a good fight for him, developing wise, and it's a good name on his resume. I think that's probably the most important thing, that he has a former heavyweight champ and a legitimate sort of top 15, 20 contender. He's there or thereabouts. He's not an old or washed up Kevin Johnson sort of figure. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, Stiverne actually. I appreciate that there's a lot against him. He's a much smaller man. He is in the autumn of his career. He's been inactive. He looked terrible last time out. He took an absolute hiding from Deontay Wilder. There are reasons to not like him as an opponent, and I can't disagree with those. Having said that, if a peak Bermain Stiverne turned up for this fight, which I'm sure he won't, but if he did, do you know I'd give him a 20% chance? Because whilst Joshua would be able to flatten him from range, Stiverne's the kind of guy who's durable, he can tuck up, and if he could survive 3 or 4 rounds of Joshua putting it on him, he is a lot smarter of a counterpuncher than Brazil. You could see Stiverne with his back against the ropes popping up with something and catching Joshua, and he did have power that would be relevant in the nature of that fight. And I do believe if they fought next, Stiverne would be the toughest opponent on Joshua's resume by a margin, actually.
I agree, and if you look at that punch that Dillian Whyte caught AJ with in that second round, that was like in close up against the ropes, and he caught him. I can, like you said, Tom. I can sort of like see, like, yeah, it would have to be a peak Stiverne, but I can see a peak Stiverne if you were to be able to bring AJ into deep water, into the later rounds and stuff. He can punch, you know. He can punch Stiverne. And
I don't think he. I don't think he needs to take him to deep rounds. I just think he needs to catch him and he could knock him out.
well, the thing is, AJ's quite quick, isn't he? And I don't know, but Stiverne's a bit slow for my money. I think
But he's slow on the front foot. You see, he's a slow like he's not a mover with his foot. He's not somebody who chases you down. But he's actually quite slick on the ropes. Like.
He's quite slick on the ropes. I'm kind of more thinking of like what we saw with AJ. With he kind of like after he was caught and he became very low output. He became very stiff, and so maybe not the later rounds, but just if Stiverne could sort of like do the same thing Dillian Whyte did, in that fight.
I think it. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of punch that Stiverne is really good at, that the one that Dillian Whyte caught. But the other thing is, I'd say, though, that Wilder has seen AJ has seen what Wilder has done, and he knows that all you need to do is you can beat him with a jab and some movement. And if he was afraid of being sparked and they are worried about Joshua's chin, that's the strategy I think they go for. But the only thing is, though, that I think when a fight is on, if AJ thinks he has a guy hurt, I think he won't be able to not go after him. That's his mentality, to try and get a guy out of there. And that even though he might go for it, he still might just walk onto a shot and can't help himself. But what we're saying is that Stiverne would have a really good counterpuncher's chance, but not much else.
Yeah, there's a good comment in the chat from Ultratech Sports who said, Stiverne has one key thing that caused Joshua problems. He pretends to be hurt to draw the other guy in, then tries to catch him in the middle of punching him, the same as what Dillian did. And I think that's a really smart point. And for me,
that's not a smart point. That's Ultratech being fucking stupid. Do you think Dillian was pretending to be hurt? He was fucked.
No, I think what he was talking about is that Dillian caught Joshua when Joshua was punching.
I know, I'm only being sarcastic, but like the thing is, like, Dillian was fucked at that point. He just caught him.
Yeah, Dillian was, he wasn't pretending to be hurt. No, I agree there.
That's what I mean. But like that Stiverne might do the same thing. That he might be hurt, or he might be pretending to be hurt, and then and Joshua can't help himself going for the finish, and he might get clocked. Yeah,
I mean, I think this is a later rounds fight actually, because for me, the athletic gap between these two, especially with Stiverne coming in heavy, being out of action for a year or whatever in his late 30s, I think in the first round and second round, I don't think Stiverne's going to be able to land. I think Joshua's going to be so much quicker, so much better mover, so much better range with the jab. The way I see this one going would be Stiverne trying to hang in there, because the biggest threat for me about Joshua is still the lack of proven stamina. So I'll take an absolute hammering in the chat now. This is good. He can take it now. I know he can take it. So
the Irish Tom fanboys are giving him stick.
Yeah. Oh, come on, lads! Like, dig into him, dig in. But no, I don't really like Ultra's videos. I'm only taking the piss.
Yeah.
You see, he can't. He's got no right of reply here, so we can just give it.
This is it. Guys, we'll move on. Just before we do, has anyone got anything more to say on Stiverne, or am I right to move on?
Nah, move on.
Move along.
Good stuff. So again, this kind of relates to the two topics that we've started the podcast with today, specifically the pay-per-view model, which is there's now these two big fights, whether you think they're big fights or not, certainly fights that Eddie Hearn is intending to put on pay-per-view, which is Eubank Golovkin and Brook Vargas. Now, what it appears to be, from my perspective, and I could easily be wrong on this, is that only one of the two is going to be made as a pay-per-view. Because if you think Fury, Klitschko rescheduled, Joshua to come back in November, I think there's only enough room for one more pay-per-view. So I suspect we'll only see one of these two fights getting made. I could easily be wrong there. It's just my suspicion. And both of these fights are really struggling at present. I was actually speaking offline with Ultra Tech Sports today about Chris Eubank Sr., and I don't know if you guys on the panel saw this, but he called out Eddie Hearn on Twitter today and said like they're looking for a meeting, they haven't been able to get hold of Eddie Hearn or something to that effect. Now I find that incredibly bizarre because nobody's going to be more motivated to make this fight than Eddie Hearn. So I'm not overly buying that if I'm completely honest. But yeah, so there you go. Both of these fights still floundering. Seems to be financial issues with Brook, Vargas, potentially some political issues with the Eubank fight. I'll throw it out there. What do you think's going on with these two? Which one do you think is going to get made? Do you think they'll both get made?
Wow. Well, I think. Like I read something today that said GGG has signed his contract and waiting to hear back. So and it needs to be. I think that fight is for September, and what is it now? Start of July, August, September.
Yeah.
But that fight is not signed super quick. They're going to find somebody else. So just like Too Fast, Too Fury said, oh yeah, GGG said that Eubank has lost his pen, and
yes.
I think he's going to lose his pen, and if he doesn't lose his pen, he'll lose his arse.
What about Brook Vargas? Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. Like people are saying Brook has to take the short of it and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. Like we had this argument before where you were saying that De Gale should have stayed in England and became a pay-per-view star, and like look how much money that Brook is looking to be paid, is going to be paid from this. If your man is getting paid, what was it, $1.6 million? Was that what it was?
No, it's gone up now, 2.1, I think.
I think Tom's referring to the Gale Durrell.
No. I'm referring to when I'm referring to what Vargas is getting paid. 2.1 million, but that includes 400,000 that's going to Top Rank. So
Yeah.
he's getting paid 1.7. So that equates to about £1 million, right? And Brook is getting paid less now than £1 million. Now, De Gale, every fight De Gale has fought in America, he's been getting very good money. He's been getting I think he got over $2 million for some of those fights. So he's getting more money, and the exchange rate was better back then. He's getting a lot more money for all of his fights than the big fight Brook has been waiting for. Now, they're going to say that, we'll get a unification title fight, and then we'll get another one down the line. We'll get Thurman or something like that. That's a big if. There's a lot of things can go wrong, a big if. And then if he gets Thurman, how much is he going to get paid? He's going to have to go to America. How much will he get paid? Will it be pay-per-view in America? Who the fuck knows? So it's like, if I was a boxer, if I was like a top British boxer, I'd be off to America by the time I'm 23. And that's where you're going to earn your money. You're going to do it like Lennox did it, and you're going to do it like all of the boys that actually made big money. The other way you make money is by staying at home and milking a belt. You can make money that way if you're not top end. But so with Brook, I don't know. Like who knows what's in those contracts that these boys are trying to sign? Eddie Hearn might be maybe trying to tie him in. Maybe he's only got 1 or 2 fights left in his contract, and Eddie Hearn wants to get him into a 5-fight deal. Who knows what it is?
The thing is with Brook, and this is what I would do if I was Brook, and I think it's what they'll be advising him to do as well, is I'd be taking the low end, if he's got to take less money than Vargas, and because if he wins that fight, then he can get bigger fights, and I think, if he was to get a fight with Thurman, I think that would be pay-per-view, and I think he'd earn good money for it. But Paul, the thing is, how else is he gonna get his name out there? How else is he gonna?
Paul, he's got 2 mandatories then, yeah, and those mandatories might be like Errol Spence, and they might kick his ass. That he might, and it mightn't be a big money fight. So he'll have 2 titles and 2 mandatories.
I think
coming
Brook
up.
Spence would be pay-per-view.
Just like Frampton.
Yeah, but it might be a great fight, and it might be pay-per-view, but it might make much money because Errol Spence is not a known quantity.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's not completely about whether a fight is pay-per-view. I mean, I bet Golovkin Golovkin and his team are wishing that Golovkin Lemieux wasn't ever pay-per-view. And I suspect that Brook Vargas could be so terrible, doesn't buys, I really could. I suspect that if that occurs, it could really damage the potential for future pay-per-view for Kell Brook.
Yeah.
Has anybody heard what the potential undercard might be? Because like if they're struggling with all the money, there's going to be a shit undercard. So it's it could really die a death. It could actually make Kell Brook not a pay-per-view star, a bad card like that.
Might
I think the
be
plan
Whyte,
was-
Antonio Tarver.
I think it was Dillian Whyte versus Dave Allen, actually, was the proposal. Yeah.
I heard Tarver was mentioned today, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's all.
Can you imagine a worse fight than Dillian Whyte versus Tarver?
No.
I think Chisora Pulev will give that a run for its money.
The problem is, that's an unrealistic fight for me, because Tarver's going to want $1 million, $2 million to come over. And, Tarver versus Dillian Whyte, I mean, one thing we can all agree on is that is certainly not a pay-per-view fight. That's probably an undercard fight, on a Saturday night show.
That's a fight that you have to, it's not pay-per-view, it's to be paid to view.
And do you know what? The other thing about that fight that I find bizarre is I know Tarver's 47 and I know he's failed numerous drug tests. Wouldn't actually surprise me if Tarver gave Dillian Whyte all sorts of issues, maybe not beat him, but certainly make him look absolutely terrible, to be honest.
That as well.
He's so defensive and he's so sound technically. He's got the angles down to a T, awkward southpaw, carries a little bit of power still. Anyway, let's bring Jet in. Jet, I'm not sure we came to you over the Brook Vargas thing. So the floor's yours, mate. Whether you want to discuss that or Tarver, Whyte, whatever you fancy, mate.
Yeah, well, talk about Golovkin and Eubank first.
Cool.
I heard Golovkin, Eubank, and GGG saying he lost his pen and that sort of stuff. Mate, it's just. And you're saying one or two of the fights won't happen. We were talking about last week. Eubank Jr was probably going to get about $3 million quid to fight Golovkin. So that in itself is unrealistic. With the sort of $2.1 million that Vargas was going to get, that's £4 or £5 million. Let's say that, give or take, obviously the currency exchange and that sort of stuff. But $5 million on two fighters. And what it does, for Golovkin, I understand if you're going to pay a couple of $1 million to bring him over, I understand he's a pound for pound fighter, let's put it that way. Jesse Vargas is not even in the top, 50 pound for pound fighters, let's put it that way. And, you're paying $2 million. What are you going to pay, the bigger names? What are you going to pay Amir Khan to fight Kell Brook? What are you going to fight if Canelo fights him? What are you going to fight? What's Canelo going to be offered if he was going to try and bring him over? I know that wouldn't happen, but those sort of fighters, Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, Lamont Peterson, those guys would want, the same, if not more, double, triple. You don't know that. So it sets a bad precedent, I think, for me. Box Talk mentioned that, and I totally agree with that sentiment. It's very, very bad business going down into the medium and long term, and that's exactly what I thought when he mentioned all these figures and saying they're going to be about a couple of weeks apart, maybe 3 weeks to a month. So I thought it was very, very unrealistic for Golovkin Eubank to happen, but they're still talking about it. The time's ticking. We'll see if that fight happens. As I said before, I don't think it's going to happen, and if it does, Golovkin wins for me anyway. Brook Vargas, in terms of getting Kell's name out there, it's not even that big a fight, but he holds 2 belts. He could potentially vacate it and move up to 154, but there's no guarantee that he's going to win the fights at 154. There's some serious fighters at 154. Demetrius Andre, the big punching Charlo, I think he's much better than his brother. Erislandy Lara, those guys are just... They're too much, I think. They're too skilled, And Kell Brook, while he does have a good chance in those fights, he certainly doesn't have a better chance against them than he has against someone like a Keith Thurman or a Danny Garcia. And I expect him to struggle against those sort of opponents. I've heard Demetrius Andrade is actually fighting the interim or the regular champion Jack Culsey, who's with the Sauerland brothers. So if he wants another belt or a cheap belt there, he might, if Andrade's holding that belt, he might struggle as well there. The fight, I think the stadium will be empty if they're trying to get it for Bramall Lane, which is a decent sized stadium. I don't know, man. That fight is a bit more realistic to happen. It's a bit more likely to happen than the Golovkin Eubank for me. Much more likely. But in terms of where Kell goes from there, again, he's still short of options for me. In terms of enhancing and developing his career, I think he's still at a standstill in his career. Whyte versus Tarver, I'd expect Tarver, as you guys said, to give him all sorts of hell. Tarver's a tricky southpaw, very awkward, will give him a lot of angles even though he's 47, and he'll just do different things that Dillian Whyte hasn't seen before. And I think Dillian Whyte, while he potentially could win, there's a massive chance that he'll probably end up losing that fight. And Antonio Tarver will go on to face potentially Anthony Joshua or those sort of names in British boxing that we'll know, and you don't want to see that. So if I was Eddie Hearn, I'd steer clear of Antonio Tarver.
Who does everyone think they should stick Dillian Whyte in with? Because there's been talk of Chisora, Dave Allen, Tarver, Price. I mean, what would we like to see? I'd
like to see him get a new tailor.
The crumb. He didn't have his crumbs in his latest IFL TV interview. It has its own fan page now.
What do you call it? So I just got to say as well, before I forget, until Eubank signs for that fight, I'm going to rub it in as much as I can now in case he does fucking go ahead and sign it. That it's never going to happen. And then I'm going to have to eat a lot of crow. But I don't think it's going to happen. And the other thing is, how much free PR has Eubank had up till now? It must be the number one boxing topic nearly in the world at the moment, is it?
Me.
I would suggest so, yeah.
Yeah.
Golovkin and Billy Joe Saunders, he's been calling out everyone. He's been calling out every single person.
Gale.
And who thinks that this fight will happen in September?
No, I can't see it happening at all.
And so, who do you end up going to fight?
John Ryder.
John Ryder, yeah. So we're back to the John Ryder. This is what I thought would be the last one. I think we'll end up with John Ryder. But I don't know if Eubank and John Ryder is pay-per-view, though.
Of course. France are 2-0 up, by the way, guys.
I presume that was a joke, Tom. I presume.
You
never know.
The thing with Eubank Jr. Triple G, right? I became skeptical when Eubank Jr. applied to fight in the Olympics because I can't remember, somebody pointed out that the dates would have clashed with when the Triple G fight was supposedly going to happen and whatnot. But I'll tell you what sealed it for me was after the Tom Doran fight in that press conference, when Senior started talking about, when the first dollar dropped, the first dollar that dropped needs to go to Sky will be to blame and whatnot. It's like, come on, you're making excuses already.
To avoid the fight. He put on Twitter.
Like, come on.
He goes, some guy tweeted him, he goes, why the stalling for Junior? Are Sky to blame? And he replied, no, Sky are good to go. We are waiting for Matchroom Boxing. #English. So I don't believe anything he says. I mean,
the leverage. When they're in these negotiations, who's got the leverage? I don't think Eubank Jr. has got much leverage.
No.
Like, he's not headlined a pay-per-view. He's not done any of this thing, and they're asking him to basically give them a deal that's equivalent to maybe Joshua's deal, or maybe even better. Who knows? Like, so it's the leverage is not there for them. But you ask me, I think this is all in their plans. If a fighter is not willing to fight, Billy Joe Saunders, what was the WBA guy called again? Jacobs. You think he's willing to then jump up and fight this guy? All of this stuff is just fitting into the same old schema you know, maybe the thing is to get yourself a huge amount of, you know, exposure and then bring Eubank Jr. to America. Maybe that's the plan. Piss off the English promoters, but make such a name for yourself in the process. You can go to America, sign for Al Heyman or somebody, and then fight lower level guys for a while.
To be honest, I hate that we're talking about it because it fucking fit. It plays right into their hands. I really do think this is about. It's just about the publicity, and it's worked.
But Paul, it's okay if we say very derogatory things about Chris Eubank Sr. So if we call him a kiddie fiddler and stuff like that, you know, we can get our own back on him. So just need to start our own meme that Chris Eubank. He does look a bit like a kiddie fiddler. It's got to be said.
I suggest we move on. I don't know what you think.
I think we should talk more about Chris Eubank Sr. being a kiddie fiddler.
No, thank you.
We'll move on to a topic that actually Tom did suggest, and don't worry if you're listening in the chat. It's very different, which is what style of fighter would you pick to beat Golovkin? So the answer to the question may not be somebody who exists at 160 pounds at present. You know, you'd be perfectly within your rights to say that Golovkin's fairly unbeatable at 160, but what you could say is, I don't know, like an Antonio Tarver if he could make 160, I don't know, for want of a better phrase. So, yeah, I mean, what I guess I'm asking is what tactics, what type of fighter, what are your thoughts on that? Let's start with yourself, Paul.
I think the only sort of like thing that comes to mind is a Floyd Mayweather at 160, 160 pound Floyd Mayweather. Not Floyd Mayweather because I think he's too small for Triple G, but somebody like that who, and I'm not talking about like latter day Floyd Mayweather. I'm talking about when he punched as well, when it was sort of like hit and not get hit rather than not get hit and not get hit. You know. Sort of like, you know, Floyd Mayweather at his best, 160 pound version of which. No, it doesn't exist. but
yeah.
That's the only style I can think of, really, to be honest.
Well, this evening after coming up with that question, I watched again, like a total nerd. I watched the Roy Jones Jr. Hopkins #1 fight. And at the time, Hopkins was quite a come-forward guy, not like Golovkin, but he was quite an attacking guy. But I was thinking that like if you think about what's so good about Golovkin, but I think Golovkin is not the fastest fighter in the world. So I think if you had an elite boxer, puncher who can move like Roy Jones Jr., I think that they could give him a lot of problems. You know, the speed on the outside. You know, and ability to stay on your feet and move around the ring for 12 rounds. I think that's the type of guy who might have a go.
Absolutely. No, you know, Pete Roy Jones Jr. is probably one of the greatest fighters you'll ever see. What about the likes of a James Toney or like of a Marvin Hagler or a Nigel Benn?
Jesus, Hagler. Can you imagine Hagler? Nigel Benn would be destroyed. You know, not because Golovkin has an amazing chin. But Ben has got too many flaws, so he wouldn't. I don't think. You know, I do know he beat what do you call the guy, McClelland, but McClelland wasn't the boxer that Golovkin is. He was just more of a kind of an elite boxer puncher. You know what I mean? Where Golovkin is something else. But Hagler against Golovkin, that would be just fucking insane. Like, you see Hagler versus Hearns. Can you imagine what Hagler versus Golovkin is? Who stalks who? Fuck me. And both with iron chins. That would just be... I don't know what that would be.
What about Demetrius Andrade? Is he the current fighter most likely to get the job done for people's money?
It's hard. Yes and no. I think in terms of defensively, he is good, very good. But I mean, he's more of a come forward sort of fighter. If you watch his fight, well, at 154, against some of the opponents he faces, like Vargas and Willie Nelson, those sort of guys, Brian Rose, he's obviously come forward and, you know, attacked them, gone aggressive. I don't know, against GGG, would he come forward or would he try and box on the outside? It depends very much on his tactics. I mean, if he tries to try and run the whole, not run, but box the whole fight on the back foot, you know, Golovkin might eventually catch up to him. But it depends what kind of style. If he's going to try and, you know, do come forward and eventually, you know, box on the back foot, do a bit of both, then possibly. I mean, my 2 pence on this is, you know, I did originally think Billy Joe Saunders would give him a lot of problems. I still think Billy Joe Saunders would give him some problems, but I think in the Andy Lee fight, I think for me he got hit, you know, a bit too much in terms of for being very, very slick and defensively sound, and against Eubank as well. So I think he'd have a hard time against Golovkin, especially with his stamina not, you know, pretty well. I think he struggled in the mid to late.
Well, you kind of cutting you out there, Jet. I don't know if that was an internet issue or something. You there, mate?
That was the censorship. I censored him.
Jet. Oh, did you? Yeah. Was there?
That happened with me. I got
you just rejoined. Jet, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It just said try again for some reason. So
yeah, that happened to me about 5 minutes.
Mate, it's you might have to start again. It's Golovkin. You're not really audible at present, Jet. It's kind of it kind of sounds like Tom did a few podcasts back, if you can remember that.
Well, Gossip, I can hear him okay. Maybe it's you.
Yes,
yeah, I could as well.
Oh, maybe it's me. Okay, try again, Jet. Oh, my apologies. It's probably just myself then. Yeah, sorry, Jet. Go for it, Jet.
Yeah, no, I can't hear him at all.
See, I can't hear anything now.
Hello?
I can hear him now.
Am I alright?
Hello.
Yeah, you can hear me, Jeff.
I can hear you now.
You're good. You're good now.
Alright. Yeah, carrying on. Golovkin, but yeah, Andre has a good chance of winning, but depends what kind of style he implements. My sort of guy who'd beat him would be, I was going to say Roy Jones Jr., possibly Pernell Whitaker, if he can make 160. You know, those sort of opponents who are very defensively sound but can come forward and cause Golovkin problems going forward as well. I don't think anyone at 160 really can do that, or, you know, 154 possibly. I know the guys are big there, and Golovkin's not a big middleweight, so it kind of, you know, it works out well. But I don't know. We have to wait and see. You know, even if a guy has a significant height advantage, I can't really see them causing too many problems. Maybe the big punching Charlo, he'd have a puncher's chance, but I still expect Golovkin to beat him quite handily. But yeah, Roy Jones Jr., Pernell Whitaker, Floyd Mayweather, those sort of guys were, you know, adequate choices to beat Golovkin.
I mean, I can hear an echo on me now. Can anybody hear? Am I coming through all right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, he has said in the past he intends to move up. So I also don't think he's very big for middleweight. And I think some of the guys, like, can you imagine him with someone like Callum Smith or
Gilberto Ramirez, those sort of guys?
I think that's the time that he's likely to get tested. I don't think anybody's going to test him at 160. Nobody at all. Not Chris Eubank Jr., not Billy Joe Saunders. I know Billy Joe Saunders is slick, but he's not slick enough. It's when he moves up, that's when I think
the natural weight advantage and the height advantage is going to catch up with him, I think.
Yeah, and the problem is he's not young either. What is he, 34?
33, 34, yeah. He's.
So, I mean, that's the most likely thing is he starts to run out of gas, you know, he gets old. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think Golden Boy and what's his name, Oscar De La Hoya are waiting on that. You know, they're waiting on.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
If you think about it, there is no other conceivable reason why Canelo doesn't move up to 160. The guy is a monster at 154.
Even at 160, he'd be big. Even at 160. The guy's at 160 as well. I mean, Danny Jacobs makes 160, but he rehydrates to 175 on fight night as well. So I mean, he's not a small middleweight at all. Andy Lee, I think, is a relatively good sized middleweight. He's quite big. Chris Eubank Jr. is massive for the weight. Billy Joe Saunders for me is actually a light middleweight. I think he's eating too many pies and he doesn't really keep his diet in check. Oh, yeah, he is a world champion, but I think he can make 154 with a bit of pushing. Same as Frankie Gavin. I think they're both on their food diet and they love the food. But
what's Billy Joe Saunders doing anyway? I mean, like I know the Bursak fight, he got the hand injury and whatnot, but I mean, like
he's going to be on the undercard for Canelo Smith, mate.
I haven't heard anything from him apart from that. What BG's just said. I haven't heard anything from him. No IFL TV interviews. No nothing.
No, what was that about the undercard for Canelo Smith?
Apparently, it was a story. I think it was from World Boxing News this week that he was pretty much a done deal to be on the undercard there.
And then build up.
Yeah, and then Canelo would go on to fight Billy Joe afterwards if he was successful.
But that's a farce in itself. I mean, that's so bollocks. Like,
fighting who though? Who's he going to fight? Who's Saunders going to fight?
Well, they said Hassan and Dam.
Yeah, but Hassan and Dam, I don't think it's going to happen.
Hassan and Dam.
Oh, okay.
It's going to happen because he's currently fighting at the Olympics and he's just won his first qualifier. So if he goes further on into the tournament, I can't see that Hassan and Dam fight happening. So that
wouldn't be a bad fight.
Yeah, but just going back to what I was saying, I think that's a total farce. It's complete bollocks. Canelo moves, he wins the WBC middleweight title. He's still holding the lineal title. He drops back down, faces Liam Smith. Let's be honest. I think all of us in this podcast, including Sherry, are expecting Liam Smith to lose that fight. So he'll be WBO light middleweight champion, and then he'll probably vacate that belt and move up to face the WBO 160-pound champion.
Oh no, what a wanker.
Joke. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse for Canelo.
Let me tell you something. I might get laughed at. I think Saunders will beat him if they fight.
Beat Canelo?
That's a close fight. That's a close fight at 160.
Yeah, it's a close fight, yeah.
The thing is with Canelo, and like he's got a style that would normally make me love him as a fighter. I like the way he fights, but he's just such a bitch.
Mate, do you know what? I don't know if it's him. I've always said I don't know if it's him. I think it's Oscar De La Hoya, honestly. I think he lost once, and he doesn't want him to lose again, and he's the biggest pay-per-view star.
Yeah, but look, Jet, Oscar De La Hoya didn't tell him to come into the ring and say all that crap.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. You don't know these promoters, mate.
That looked like it was from his. That looked like it was from his heart. It didn't look staged.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But then again, I mean, in the past, would he have faced Lara and Trout? I mean, Oscar obviously said yes, and they were tougher fights than all the other fights that he had. I don't know. I just think it's Oscar's holding him back to a larger extent than should be the norm.
Yeah, but the thing is, Trout's not anywhere near as big as Triple G or as difficult as Triple G. Lara, I think Canelo's bigger than just about everybody he fights.
And Lara fought before that and looked like dog shit, didn't he? He fought
Angulo
and looked like dog shit. So it's not like Canelo.
Down, did he? I think.
Sorry?
Did he get knocked down? I think.
A couple of times. I think he got a split or a draw or something. Yeah. So, but one thing is, somebody in the chat was saying, and somebody on one of Tom's videos earlier during the week was talking about the Uma fight. I think he's Ugandan.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was the wrong fight, but I went and watched the other one. Like, I saw that fight, and it was 2011. That is amazing. He was a totally different fighter then. Like, he wasn't a stalker and he wasn't aggressive. Like, I couldn't believe the change. It was like looking at a completely different fighter. That if people think that what Uma did are going to be successful against this GGG, they're on drugs.
Irish Tom as well. I actually saw that comment. I think I was going to comment on that, but I was looking at that. And also, if you look a few fights down the line, look at that fight against Gregor's Proxer when he made his US debut. I think it was when he came over, well, his big US debut, and he knocked down Proxer, who was a pretty decent fighter at the time. He knocked him down 5 times and absolutely obliterated him. That change from 3 or 4 fights down the line, that was a severe change. I mean, even now, like that, the Proxer fight to now is a massive change. And anyone thinking that what Uma did to GGG, you're spot on. I can't see it.
It's night and day. Like I literally, they're like 2 totally different fighters. He used to stand in the ring and kind of just like throw counter punches and a few jabs and stuff, but there was no stalking, none of the like. It just shows you what a really good professional coach can do to an amateur style.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Spot on. You're totally right. I agree with you on this one.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, it's certainly be interesting to see what happens. I think that Saunders Canelo would be a good fight, and I think Eubank Golovkin would be a good fight. Although obviously I picked Golovkin in that one, but yeah, it could be an interesting time for that division. Actually, it's been a little bit of a lull, and it'd be nice to see some big fights coming back in the middleweights. Guys, let's change the pace slightly. Let's talk about there's not too much grade A boxing at the minute, but one fight that for me is actually an underrated fight, and I was actually speaking to Paul before we came online to do the podcast about this. But I actually think that the Kovalev-Chilemba fight, I actually think Chilemba is a good prep fight for Kovalev. I think Chilemba's very tough, very rugged. Don't get me wrong, not the prettiest guy to watch in there, not the cleanest of work. He's a bit scrappy, a bit rough and ready, but he's a very rough, tough guy who can spoil. He's very durable, and I think someone like Kovalev needs those rounds. He's won a lot of his fights by easy stoppage. So I think I quite like the fight. I also was asked to speak about what the over/under should be for this fight and how many rounds we think it should go. So let's hand it around the panel. Tom, do you wanna have a chat on that one?
Yeah, like I think I've only seen Chilemba. I think I don't know if I saw both Tony Bellew fights. I saw the first one where he was. To be honest with you, I thought he was robbed against Tony Bellew. I think that was a draw, wasn't it?
Yes, the first one was a draw.
I thought he clearly won that fight, and I thought Tony Bellew was poor in that fight. But he's an awkward guy. From what I remember, he's awkward. But I don't think he has the skills. He's got an awkward style. It's kind of like a style that's made to makes everybody look bad against you. Kind of like what was the guy who fought Huey Fury there last time? What was his name?
Fred Cassie.
Yeah.
Fred Cassie. He's kind of got that kind of awkward style now. I'm not saying he's exactly the same. But it's been a couple of years since I saw him. But I do think he's kind of a boxer and he's awkward. So it's probably quite a good prep for Andre Ward. But it's like. It's probably about as good as you could get. Who can you prep to fight somebody like Andre Ward? There's nobody, barring Floyd Mayweather, there's nobody who fights anyway like Andre Ward currently, I don't think. So, I think it's a good fight. It's better than, it's actually a decent fight. I'd be interested to see how many rounds that goes. Because he's quite tough, Chilemba, and he's quite awkward. So I can imagine that could go quite late. Like the Crusher has been knocking a lot of people out, but he doesn't always knock guys out early. He took how many rounds? Was it 8 for Jean Pascal the first time? 5 or 6, 7 in the second time. I can't remember exactly.
7 in the second one.
7 in the second one and 8 in the first. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's not unfeasible that he'll go that length. And in fact, I'd expect him to go more than 6. I don't know what the betting odds are. My internet is broken again, but I think it's quite a good. It's certainly better than the Alexander Brand fight.
He's never been knocked out either, Chilemba.
I think Chilemba might go the distance. I know Bernard Hopkins is clearly a league above Chilemba in terms of skill, and I'm not going to compare the two in that sense. But let's not forget Bernard Hopkins was a man who was 50 years old at the time, and he went the distance. So I don't think it's completely out of the question that Chilemba will go the distance. The other thing is, I know Tom was saying he thinks Chilemba was robbed against Bellew. I'm a big fan of Eleider Alvarez. I've been on his hype train for a long time now, and there's a widely held viewpoint that Chilemba beat Alvarez as well. So you could say Chilemba's actually a bit better than his record suggests, even though he's not the most entertaining fighter. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out, and I think it will go late or potentially even the distance.
Yeah, I think it will.
Yeah, you got anything to add on that one, mate?
Yeah, I think as Irish Tom said, it's a very good prep fight for Andre Ward. It's definitely Chilemba is very awkward, very slippery. It's especially considering the last few opponents he's faced, apart from probably Bernard Hopkins. But Bernard Hopkins was way past his prime, even though he was still reigning light heavyweight champion. But he's very, very, he's a nightmare for many people in the light heavyweight division to face. If you match him against some of the top end guys, he'd give Jürgen Bremer hell, I think, for 12 rounds. And those sort of guys, Stevenson, I think he'd be very good against, very competitive against. So yeah, it's a very good fight. Obviously, nothing will come close to that preparation for Andre Ward, apart from the actual Andre Ward, because he's very, he's one of a kind, very unique, especially in that sort of weight class, the upper weight classes. And but I'd expect it to go late or decision, but I'd go for Kovalev late stoppage. I wouldn't be surprised if it's early and he catches Chilemba cold, but Chilemba does some pretty good things in there, and I think he may make it tougher than expected for Kovalev. It's on a Monday, so if anyone, I think it'll be in the afternoon because it's in Russia, so it's a good time to kind of watch it in the afternoon as a sort of break. I was going to say something, but I can't remember now. But yeah, if I remember, I'll spell it out.
Paul, is there anything from yourself on the Kovalev one, mate? I know we touched on it earlier.
Yeah, well, just pretty much what we said earlier. Kind of glad to come on here and get a bit of sanity, because a lot of the videos I've been watching on YouTube, people seem to be shitting on the fight a little bit. Like you said, mate, I think it's a good fight. I think he's tricky, he's awkward. I personally didn't think he looked as good in the Alvarez fight as he did maybe a couple of fights before. But I still think he, is a good tune-up fight. It is a good tune-up fight. Certainly, I think it's better. He's a much better opponent than Alexander Brand.
Yeah.
I do expect Kovalev to win. Chilemba's never been stopped, I don't think. But then again, I don't know if he's ever faced anybody like Kovalev either. I mean, I think I agree with Jet. I think late stoppage. I can see him sort of like, sort of like spoiling things for Kovalev for a few rounds, and then I think maybe Kovalev stops him mid to late.
I think as well, what I was going to say at the end is he faced Tony Bellew. I think he won the first fight, actually, to be honest. Tony Bellew completely ran out of gas after round 6, and he was out on his feet pretty much. But the second fight, I think Tony Bellew beat him actually quite handily. I had him winning by at least 2 rounds, if not more. I'd probably have to go watch the fight back. So I mean, if you're kind of getting beaten by the level of Tony Bellew compared to Kovalev, Kovalev looks like a murderous sort of fighter to fight at the moment. Tony Bellew, I mean, let's put it that way. I mean, I know Tony Bellew's won a world title, but McCarby would get knocked out in the same amount of time by Kovalev, I reckon. And he was very small, Cruz. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think, as you said, Paul, I think he's going to spoil and be very slippery and awkward. So,
Tony Bellew carries power.
Very true.
I was teased.
Best cruiserweight in the world as well.
Yeah, #1 cruiserweight in the world.
#1 cruiserweight, mate. I could never get over him calling out fish eyes. That was the funniest thing. That was just comedy gold at its finest. I didn't actually hear anything he he said after, so it was a bit disappointing.
There wasn't too much good boxing on last week actually, and there isn't too much on next week, so there's not too much in the way of fights to discuss. But another one just to mention very briefly, and I haven't actually seen the fight. I would suspect that no one on the panel has seen it either, because I don't believe the footage has been made available. But if someone has seen it, I'd certainly be keen to discuss further. But is Erkan Derek Rossi, who fought last week. It was a 10-round fight. Tepper won by unanimous decision. Apparently looked pretty poor in it, looked pretty overweight, and really laboured to a 10-round decision. I think some of the judges scored it 7 rounds to 3. And for me, this, we talk about performance-enhancing drugs in boxing quite a lot on this channel, but if you look at Erkan Tepper's reign of destruction, Michael Sprott, single round. Martin Rogan, a single round. David Price, I don't know if it's 2 rounds or 3 rounds or what, but knocked.
2 rounds.
Yeah, just knocked terribly out. He goes up against Derek Rossi, who was sparked unconscious by Audley Harrison in Prize Fighter. 5 or 6 years ago when Rossi was a lot younger. And I know Derek Rossi isn't terrible. I know he did all right against Stiverne and stuff, but for me, this kind of highlights the impact that performance-enhancing drugs can have on someone's career. And you saw it before with Larry Alabama, I guess. I know he was a much lower-level fighter to begin with, but he was walking through opposition with early knockouts, came off the drugs, and I don't think he's won a fight since. It seems to be the same thing. So I guess did anyone see the Tepper fight?
No, I didn't see it. I tried to look for the footage, but I can only see one from ringside, so I couldn't really see much. But from what I heard on Twitter and all the boxing websites and that sort of stuff, he didn't do so good. I think one of the scorecards was 7-3. I'm not sure about the other one, and one was 6-4, so quite close. I mean, Tepper by no means had a easy ride. It looked on the judges' scorecard. But mate, I'm not surprised that we spoke about it last week. He's knocked out these sort of guys horrendously, really, really bad. I mean, the only good opponent that he didn't knock out was Johan Depar. So that kind of says it all, really. That he's been on the drugs in these other fights, and he's brutally KO'd him almost to the point of they can't even speak for 6 to 8 weeks because the jaw's sealed shut with stitches and that sort of stuff. It's really, really bad, and what, I for one would be happy to never see him in the ring again. That's worse than putting plaster of Paris in your gloves and knocking Cotto out for Margarita or something like that. It's just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, and that's. Do you know what? I saw a statement, and I won't quote it because I can't remember who the statement was, but it was some governing body or something of that nature, and they said they were happy to let Erkan Tepper finish his ban early because they had received assurances from Team Tepper that he was going to be a clean athlete. Well,
Oh, great.
yeah.
You tell anyone that nowadays. You can say I'm your best mate, but you bloody stab him in the back. Life's not that simple, I don't think, and boxing certainly shouldn't be especially when it's another man's health at risk, and it's not only the health, it's the guys that train them, the emotional trauma that everyone has to go through if something devastating like that happens. You don't know when something really that bad or severe is going to happen in the ring. And it's a travesty. It's that this guy's come back, 1, early, and 2, he's come back in a decent level fight. Like Derek Rossi, as you said, is not a bad opponent. If he was coming against some sort of literally road sweep or binman, then I understand, complete nobody. But he's come against a sort of decent level operator, and that's what's shocking in it within itself.
Absolutely. Paul, Tom, anything? Yeah.
I saw the fight, and he looked. It's up on YouTube now. I thought he looked really poor. Not anything like the Erkan Tepper that knocked David Price out at all.
Does anyone know what weight he came in? Because I think David Price one, he came in at a career heaviest around 250, 260, so I wasn't sure.
No idea. He just looks fat like he always does. But I mean,
Kebab man.
I'm not even, to be honest, and the view isn't fantastic, but it's good enough to see what's going on. It looks like it's in a school gym or something. I'm not even so sure he won the fight, to be honest. I thought certainly for spells, Rossi was doing more. Rossi looked the more lively of the two, for sure. And I think it really does, sort of like you guys were saying, it really illustrates the fact that people debate, oh, do these performance enhancing drugs really give them that much? Do they give them more power? Do they give them more this, that? On this evidence, yeah, fucking right they do.
Like, all you have to do is go back and look at Areola when he got done for weed, and you can see how it improved him.
But no, I mean, these sort of drugs. I mean, I read the other day about something about Povetkin and that sort of stuff. It was like, and there was still Ryabinski, his promoter, is obviously a billionaire, and he was saying, why I don't understand why the fans are getting so upset. It was only a nano trace and that sort of stuff. But that doesn't take away from the fact that your fighter was taking drugs.
Yeah, you cheated.
Yeah, and the worst thing.
No matter how much you trace, a trace in your body means at one time there was a full dose in there. So
Yeah.
if they'd had the test like 2 days after he'd have taken it, it would have been like a huge amount in there.
Yeah,
But because it was a few weeks later and it was a trace, that means we should be less upset. The plain fact is, yeah, if you're like taking drugs to enhance your performance, it's like taking a fucking bat into the ring with you.
Yeah. As I said, it's almost as bad as Margarito loading his gloves.
Well, it is.
You know, almost trying to savagely kill Cotto, or Shane Mosley. Luckily, Nazim Richardson caught him before the Shane Mosley fight, which was, life-saving potentially. I mean, it's awful. It's awful. It's really
I mean, if you look at the state of Cotto's face, who's to say in 5-10 years' time Cotto won't be? God forbid, and I really hope not. But we don't know what that beating like. And this is a guy with kids. Let's have it right, yeah. This is disgusting fucking shit, mate. And for the fact of Tapper being back into the ring, personally, I don't give a fuck who the opponent is. I think it's disgusting that he's back in the ring. I think it's disgusting that he's back in the ring so quickly, and I just think the whole thing's a fucking farce. Sorry, but I do.
Mate, look at I don't know if you guys know Magomed Abdeslamov. He faced Perez in the Olympics. Faced David Price. Look at what happened to him. Mike Perez, no loaded gloves, no drugs, no nothing. He fought him. Abdeslamov, obviously, a couple of days later, obviously something's happened to him, and now he's in a wheelchair, and he has a childlike brain. He's a baby. He wears diapers and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But,
Michael Watson, Gerald McClellan, there's been loads.
That's all no drugs. That's all no drugs, and that's how damaging the sport of boxing is. And this guy is taking performance-enhancing drugs to hurt the other man that he's facing, and the German Boxing Federation or whatever it is, they've obviously said, "Oh, Team Teppo said he's going to be clean." How do you know that after he's just faced, 4 or 5 people, 6 people in his career out of how 15 fights, and he's been on drugs for pretty much, the majority of his career, and he's been almost like killing people for 6 to 8 weeks. How do you? You know what I mean?
It's about money. It's about money. It's because Tepper, as far as German boxing goes, there's not really anybody else that's carrying the torch, and they've obviously just thought, we can make more money if we make something up to let him off early. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's like Nick Blackwell as well. So
lads, the vast majority of these boxers are on PEDs.
Yeah, no.
The vast majority of them are on PEDs, and like if we're talking about it, look, it looks like Tyson Fury was on PEDs. The one thing I forgot to mention the last time about Tyson Fury, well, I don't know if anybody heard Peter Fury's interview on the Sky Boxing podcast, and it was extremely carefully worded what he said. It sounds very much like they got caught for it, and especially when the two guys get caught for the same drug, you know, we're going to have to make the exact same comments we were making now that we're going to make about Tepper, we're going to make about Tyson Fury. All of these guys are probably on them, you know.
Well, I mean, if Tyson Fury is on them, then he should be banned, same as everybody else.
Yeah, and we should, you know, sometimes. And the other thing I'd like to say is, anybody read about Mo Farah's latest coach getting done?
I heard something.
A guy had a training camp in northern Spain, and he with like 60 people he was training, or 16, I can't remember, and he had caught with like absolutely shitloads of drugs in their hotel where all the boys were staying, or the houses that they'd rented out. And this guy was hired by the British Athletics Federation before the 2016 Olympics. And this is what happens. These coaches, they get them in, the Olympics guys. So when we talk about, Russia is so dodgy, all of these countries are exactly the same. When the British Federation know they want to get medals in 2012, or whatever, 2016.
By any means necessary, isn't it?
They go for the coaches. They say, this coach is very successful. And everybody in the sport knows successful coaches are the ones that are able to do the drugs well. And they make, it's well known within it. And all of these people are on the drugs. So we can assume that it's exactly the same in athletics as it just like it is in cycling and boxing. In boxing, you've got these fitness guys who are, you have your trainer, and then you've got your fitness and conditioning coach, strength and conditioning coach. Those guys are essentially, and everybody knows it in the business, those guys are essentially, PED experts. How to cheat them, how to do it. Look at how Ricky Hatton used to blow up in weight and come right back down. And he had, what was his guy's name? Kerry something. And that's what these guys are for. They're all at it. So do
you know what? I'm not as pessimistic as you. I know a lot of them do it, but do you know what? It is also possible to do it naturally. It is also possible to do it naturally. And the thing is, there's been a lot of athletes that have risen to enormous heights that have been clean as well. I mean, look at someone like Usain Bolt. He ran that fast that they were testing him up the arse, thinking,
that's just plain wrong, Paul, because there was a big scandal about the Jamaican Federation who were doing the tests, and at the time they caught nearly everybody in that camp except him, which is extremely suspicious to me. Just like it used to happen with the American sprinter who won in Los Angeles and 84, and not Ben Johnson, the American guy. Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis got caught numerous times, and USADA brushed it under the carpet. Yeah, so if we're looking at
but the thing is, Bolt, after that Jamaican thing, where that thing with the Jamaican thing happened, he got tested by outside agencies as well, because they were sure he was doping, and he was clean.
But Paul, just look at you can pass tests and be doping. The fact that you don't get caught doesn't mean that you're not.
I know
what I mean?
I know that. What I'm saying is, just because a few get caught doesn't mean they're all doping either, Tom.
I know that, but I'd say if you look at the top, say 100-meter races, and you look at the fastest top 10 guys of all time, I'd say every single one of them, I don't know this for a fact because my internet's are working, every single one of them, apart from Bolt, has been caught with drugs. And probably the fastest clean time that's been ever run is probably close to 10 seconds, maybe in the high 9.9s.
Was Linford Christie caught?
Yeah, he was caught.
I'll tell you, the one thing Tom's saying, he's spot on actually, is there's one of the big races that Bolt won. It was, I guess there's 8 people in a race, and every single one of the big ones, and this was one of the major finals, every single one of the other runners has been done since. So, look, I really like Usain Bolt. I love the idea of Usain Bolt being a clean athlete. It is hard to believe that a man is so superior to the rest of the field when it is now a fact that 100% of the competition were on drugs.
Yeah, and not only is he superior, if you think about the fastest clean time of all time, it's probably about 10 seconds, and he's running 5% quicker than that. That is fucked up. In a sport where the margins of a half or a third of a percent wins you a title, he's running 5% faster than everybody else. it's just unbelievable. And in boxing, you know, if we're looking, who knows, the drugs, they were probably all taking drugs in the 60s and 70s, but they were different and they weren't testing them. They were probably all on amphetamines to help them do 15 rounds. So, you know what I mean? It's probably always been in there.
I know exactly what you mean, mate, but I've just had experience of being around and being involved with situations where there is a small percentage of human beings that are capable of pushing themselves beyond what normal people are able to do, and I do know in this case, and I'm talking about special forces selection. I do know for a fact that these guys were clean. They weren't using drugs. So all I'm saying is it's possible, mate.
Yeah, like I would say back to that is that like anybody like who's an elite athlete, you know, they're all like 1 in a million kind of types. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and so all of the top elite athletes are all going to be 1 in a million types. And then if one of them gets a 1 or 2% edge on the other ones, they're going to be able to beat the other ones. That's just anyway. We're gone off boxing. I'm sorry I brought it up. I'm always bringing it up. But I just feel like that when we give Tepper such opprobrium, you know,
PCPED over there.
Yeah. But like, you know, we give Tepper such opprobrium, and we give it to, and we also give it to Povetkin, right? But we don't give it to Roy Jones. We don't give it to. We don't give it to Floyd Mayweather.
All of them.
I do.
Tarver. You know,
we don't give it to Floyd Mayweather. We don't give it to take your pick. We don't give it to Mike Tyson. We don't give it to any of these guys, and they've all been taking loads of drugs.
To be fair, they haven't been brought up, but you know.
Tyson admits to all the stuff he did. Roy Jones got done.
Floyd Mayweather let it slip about a vampire facial in a press conference as well, which we all know is what. You know, that's doping. You know, Floyd Mayweather was fucking neck deep in it.
Yeah, and he got caught. He got caught taking a drip.
Yeah.
That's unexplainable. It's not like he's struggling to make weight. He walks around at his boxing weight. So we all know that Floyd's on it. So I just feel like that. You know, I don't like giving Tepper too hard a time. You know, because he's no worse than basically all the rest of them.
You're probably right. I think the reason the Tepper one resonates so strongly with me, mate, is firstly 3 fighters who we all know and who have all been a big part of our boxing scene over the last few years, all horrifically sparked out by him and career-threatening knockouts. We've then had the police raid his house, and we've had police level involvement. It was so bad with the amount of stuff they found there.
What I would like to see is I'd like to see it be a criminal offence.
It should be a criminal offence. You're totally right. You're totally right. And then what upsets me about it is the complete lack of ability from the sport to do anything about it. You know, you've got the police raiding his house because of the drugs. Now, a lot of the other cases, you know more about this stuff than I do, but a lot of the cases you mentioned there, I mean, the Floyd Mayweather one, for example, I see where you're coming, but the facts of the matter are that Floyd was given a pass on that.
But he also paid him $100,000.
Indeed, and I understand that's suspicious, but the fact of the matter is that is technically not guilty. Whereas Erkan Tepper, for me, if you've got a guy as guilty as that, and we're still not doing anything about it, it is really disappointing.
Severity, I think. The level of severity. I mean, Roy Jones took whatever he did, and he took it well, he got busted later on in his career, didn't he? But Erkan Tepper's sort of in the the peak sort of position in his career, and but
the testing is much better now. The testing went right.
But he should know that, as in, if he knows that the testing's good, he shouldn't be taking these drugs. And as I said, it was before the Price fight that they said he was taking it for more than a few of his fights. So, I mean, it is the severity and the level to which he's taking it. He must have been taking it, to some sort of astronomical level that he was almost killing people in the ring.
Look, I don't see that. I just think he was taking it and he got caught. If you get caught taking something in your system for meldonium or whatever the hell it is, they don't go to the police and go, "Hey, he's got meldonium, raid his house." Tepper got his house raided. No, most of them don't. So it's kind of, he just got caught. Like, what was I going to say?
Caught in a bad way, though, isn't it?
Pepper was on like proper heavy-duty anabolic steroids. I think there's a big difference, isn't there?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Whereas, these sort of like Povetkin was probably he said he was taking meldonium, and it was he had some sort of, I don't know, thing in his heart, and it was used to open up the blood vessels and all that rubbish. But that's obviously different.
But that's just like EPO, and EPO is also popular in boxers. When Roy Jones Jr. was fighting in his prime, there was hardly no drug testing, only testing on the night. Who knows what went on. The other thing I'd like to say, though, is the WBC are going to do VADA testing on all their top 15, and that's a very positive step forwards.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
I think it needs to be extended to all the fighters who are in WBC sanctioned fights, not just the top 15.
There's a clean boxers program or something. It's being headed by some woman. Apparently, she's really, really sort of like honest. I was watching this thing on this guy who I really trust his opinion on stuff. And he was saying he knows her, and she's really kind of like really. She fucking anybody that's caught doing anything like that in her staff, she'll kick them out straight away. And they're talking about all the sanctioning bodies trying to get all the sanctioning bodies to join onto that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I hope so. Tom, you guys saw? I'm guessing you all saw Gabe Montoya's interview with Box Talk, and Box Talk said, "How many of the top fighters do you think are doping?" And he goes, "Oh, probably around 70%." And I thought it'd probably be around 40%, 50%. 70% is a hell of a lot of fighters in the world on drugs, if you put it that way. There's a lot of top fighters on the juice.
I'd say as well as I'd say the very best as well. I'd say it's nearly them all. I'd say there are some people who are able to compete that aren't.
There's a load of them. There must be. If he's saying at 70%, he's quite a respected sort of figure in the boxing, drug department, that sort of stuff. So to say around 70%, that is a hell of a lot of top fighters on the juice.
Scary thought. It's a scary thought. That means when you take a fight, there's more than a 50-50 chance that whoever you fight is going to be doping, even if you're not.
And I'd say if you get into the top 5 in each division, I'd be surprised if it wasn't closer to 90%. If you take the top 5, I'd say it could be close to 100%. I think
Tom's so fucking pessimistic.
No, I'm just being honest. Like, if I look at the physiques, this thing of what Canelo is now able to do, and so is Callum Smith. These guys are able to really shrink down.
Yeah.
I think there has to be something new there. That has to be a new technique.
A heavyweight, let's put it that way. In stature, he's a heavyweight. He's 6'4", I think, or 6'3", and he's weighing 168 pounds. I don't know how he does that, honestly.
Yeah, I'm just very suspicious. That to me is a very new extreme thing that's been happening. Guys being able to rehydrate 20 pounds. So
Canelo's incredible. Canelo's got it down to a science, but I mean, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't think he'd ever make 154 again. Canelo, he's that big, but
he was very drained at the last day. But I'd say 1 pound. Imagine the advantage he'll have over Liam Smith. He'll have a 15-pound advantage, which is a lot.
Possibly 20.
That's a 2 weight class advantage.
Yeah.
Sorry, BG, I interrupted you there. What were you going to say, mate?
No. I was just going to, with the Callum Smith one, you do. I mean, for example, I am slightly taller than Callum Smith, but I could make 12 stone. There's a kind of build that you get, and guys like Callum Smith and guys like Rocky Fielding, they don't really concern me in that sense, because I believe that just people's metabolisms are very different, and he's got that kind of long, rangy body. So I was kind of more just going to stick up for him in particular, but yeah,
stick it up for your own.
Stick it up for my own, yeah. So, there you go, guys. We've been live for coming up to 2 hours now. Let's do a quick wit round the panel, see if there's anything else that anyone wants to throw out in particular. Jet,
There is. I mentioned it in our personal chat. I said Chavez Jr. versus Jalen Love.
Yeah.
In August time. It's rumored to be in August time. And there's another fight. I don't know if anyone follows the division. Shinsuke Yamanaka versus Anselmo Moreno is number 2. The rematch is on in Japan as well. So they're supposed to be in the next coming months. Jalen Love, you know, he's not a very good fighter. He's very overhyped. Chavez Jr. obviously we know he has weight issues and whatever. But catch weight at 170, it's another, you know, silly fight to make at 170. I mean, Chavez Jr. was supposed to face Badu Jack, if I'm correct, and he pulled out with a heel injury or something on the lines of that. So, you know, I mean, it's a good fight for them both because the winner can potentially get a world title shot in the near future. But it's not really a win-win for either. I mean, it's just a fight to be made to try and get one contender out, I guess. Yamanaka versus Moreno, very good fight actually. Moreno, you know, he's had a few tough fights, but I think he won the first fight in Japan and got robbed because Yamanaka's promoters are quite wealthy. So he got robbed in that fight for me. If anyone wants to go watch that, please do. And Yamanaka, I think, is on the pound for pound rankings by the ring. He's number 9. So it'd be interesting to see if Moreno would take his place. Moreno's obviously faced a few good opponents. He's faced Juan Carlos Payano. He lost to him by a technical decision, actually, who recently lost to Raushi Warren. And Raushi Warren, actually, versus Jamie McDonnell has been ordered by the WBA, which is a very, very good fight. I'm favouring McDonnell in that fight. And, yeah, Moreno's obviously faced Abner Mares. He lost to him by quite a wide decision as well. So that'll be a good rematch. I'm looking forward to that.
Sounds good. Okay, cheers for that, Jet. Paul, is there any other points to pick up from yourself?
No, I don't think so, mate. No.
Cool. Tom?
Well, I was going to suggest the Frampton versus Santa Cruz fight, but maybe we'll leave that to... It's only on in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll leave that to the next pod. It's a bit late.
Yeah. We will definitely come back to that one. That's a good fight, actually. I'm looking forward to that one. So,
yeah, great fight.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. Real competitive. A good clash of styles there as well. So
you can get 6 to 5. You can get 6 to 5 on Carl Frampton. I think that's a good price. Apparently, Carl Frampton this week was actually talking about moving up again to super featherweight. I don't know how he's going to do that with such stumpy arms. He looks like a judo fighter more than a boxer.
He must be joking, man. He's off his nut if he thinks he's going to make. You know, if he'll get killed by the guys at super feather. Honestly,
that's what I think so too. Like I think featherweight is like the.
Mate, look at the guy. One guy who fights at he fought our man Stephen Smith, Jose Pedraza. He's huge for super featherweight.
Yeah.
He's been talking about moving to lightweight in his next fight because he can't get Lomachenko. He wants the unification. Imagine him versus Frampton. Oh my gosh.
I think Frampton might struggle with Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I think he's gonna lose to Santa Cruz. Yeah, I'll put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, Santa Cruz is like he's
got. Santa Cruz was a bantamweight, lads.
So much taller than him.
But he's very tall, very rangy. But he doesn't.
Yeah, but he was a bantamweight, so he's not naturally that big. Remember?
Yeah. But I think he's had a strong, hard 12 rounds with Abner Mares to get under his belt.
That's the only fight he had. That's the only fight in his career.
Kiko Martinez as well. Kiko's a good fighter.
Frampton, I mean, last fight.
But he like
quick.
But your man, what was it? Santa Cruz. The only name that I can see that's any good is Mares, and Mares is past it.
I agree. His resume is absolute shite.
And he only scraped past Mares. Like he won it by probably 2 rounds, 7-5 or something.
I had him win quite wide. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be honest.
I can't remember, but I remember it. I think the judges' scorecards was reasonably close.
Yeah, no, I think they had 114 a draw, and then they had the other 2 scorecards for Santa Cruz. I had it a bit wider, about I put it 8-4, possibly something like that. I just thought Mares. He didn't look as good as he did in the Moreno fights and the previous fights. He was supposed to face Cuellar. He was supposed to face Cuellar next, but he failed the sort of Nevada testing for his eye test because his eyesight was bad or something on the lines of that. So I haven't really heard from Mario since. So yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Certainly, we'll put that very much towards the top of the list when that week, when that fight is, when we're in fight week for that fight, definitely. Guys, I'll wrap it up. We've been going for just sort of 2 hours. I'm actually really pleased with how it went tonight because I was a bit worried we were going to be a bit thin on the ground in terms of things to talk about tonight, but I think it's flowed fairly well. So yeah, thanks very much to everyone on the panel. Thanks to Paul. Thanks to Tom. Thanks to Jet. We will have Sherry back with us, and the podcast will run on Wednesdays at 8:30 going forward. So yeah, thanks a lot to everyone, and have a good evening, everyone.
Take
Cheers,
care,
guys.
Do it.